Ladies and gentlemen, please a warm welcome for Mr. Gene Norman.
I hate to interrupt the music, it's so great. And I must say that I was afraid the band wouldn't be as good as Duke's bands were, but I really believe they are. Give them a hand. I was very fortunate. As Tommy said, I presented the band on radio for 25 years, on television for many years, and concerts for 16 years, and my clubs for 10 years. And I really got to know the man, and he was super civilized, as Henry Miller described him. If you look up the word elegant in the dictionary, there's a picture of Duke Ellington. And I first encountered Duke, unbelievably, when I was 9 years old. It seemed that his manager, Irving Mills, lived around the corner from where I lived. And his son and I were in the 3rd grade together, and I was always over their house listening to Duke Ellington. How about that? 9 years old, and I was transfixed. It was an epiphany for me, because I felt something that I knew would last me for a lifetime. It was great passion. And of course, I had a band in college at the University of Michigan, and we had a Duke Ellington theme song, In My Solitude. Unfortunately, it was prophetic. We usually played in our solitude. Then, shortly thereafter, I graduated from college when I was 18 years old. I became a DJ. Why? Because I wanted to present the music. And I started in a small place called the Bronx for free on Sunday afternoon. And I remember I used to borrow the records. I was very poor. We'd borrow the records, give the guy a plug at the record store, and bring the records back. Anyway, I finally got a job and became a full-fledged disc jockey. And for 24 years, I would do Duke Ellington. I would do 4-hour Duke Ellington shows on radio. And then finally, we got into the concert business starting in 1947. And by the way, we played this hall many times. I feel very much at home here. In fact, the last concert I ever presented here was Nat Cole. I'll never forget that. Marvelous guy. Anyway, 24 years on the radio. We started in, my first nightclub was the Empire on Vine Street. Carlos Gastel, who managed Woody Herman, and Stan Kenton and Peggy Lee and Nat Cole, came to me one night and said, Gene, you're in the concert business, we've got to open a nightclub because Woody has no place to play. So we opened the Empire. The second act was the great Ellington Band, with all the great men, Hodges and Webster, and all of them. It was a dream come true for me. And after that, we were in the concert business. We played Duke in concert all up and down the coast for about 16 years. And I remember that's when I really got to know him best, was in the clubs, between sets when you could really talk, and then on the road. We used to drive together. And I'll never forget, once we were playing San Francisco. I didn't go out too often because I was on the radio and TV, and my sponsor didn't like it when I left. Anyway, he was in the presidential suite at the Fairmont, and he invited me up, and there he was, this most elegant man I've ever met. A man I remember with tails and top hat, sitting there at the piano, in an old bathrobe and a stocking cap, at the piano composing. I'll never forget that. In any case, he knew the play is the thing, to quote a famous English author named Bill Shakespeare. He knew that he had to write. He was a compulsive writer. His body of work is what will live forever. He wrote every kind of music. And incidentally, a lady that I hired to do publicity for the band, Pat Willard, went off with the band, and now she's the Ellington archivist at the Library of Congress, and she's writing a book about him. Incidentally, 63 of my concerts and radio shows are now in the archives at the Library of Congress. I'm very proud of that. I'd like to talk a little bit about Duke Ellington, the man. He was charmingly elusive. It was very difficult to get a straight answer out of him. He was svelte. And of course, when it came to the ladies, Duke was no longer the Duke, he was Prince Charming. He was the most svelte man I've ever met with the ladies. I remember, I learned part of his repartee. He would look at a lady and say, "My God, what a beautiful dress, I'm so jealous of it." And they'd say, "What?" "Not what you think." He said, "Yes, I'm jealous of it because I'll never be as close to you as that dress is." How about that? And he was still a hand kisser. And in those days, we'd call him a ladies' man or a lady killer. Now they call them womanizers. And I really hate that word because it sounds like a kitchen appliance. And you'll notice that a lot of his music was dedicated to the ladies, like Sophisticated Lady, which some consider the greatest song written in America. If you ever tried to play it with a 6-flat key signature, that bridge is impossible to sing. In any case, it was Sophisticated Lady and Satin Doll, and of course, you heard Warm Valley tonight. Guess what that refers to? You know, he stands to, "Why do you go out with the band?" It's backbreaking. I went out with him a couple of times. I couldn't stand it. You know, if it's Tuesday, this must be Oakland. It's really tough to be on the road, especially with 20 men. And he said, "I have to have the band. I have to have someone to write to. They're my palette." And he wrote for individual musicians. He wrote for Hodges and Lawrence Brown. He wrote for the guys in the band. They were his amanuensis, so to speak. And of course, when he brought in Strayhorn, he and Strayhorn were like twins. Duke would start something and say, "Billy, you finish it." And by the way, Take the A Train, written by Billy Strayhorn, and Duke was magnanimous enough to use Billy's theme as his theme. That was remarkable. And I know about the A Train because when I was a kid in New York, I used to take the A Train every Saturday to go to Harlem, to go to the Apollo Theater in the afternoon, and the Savoy Ballroom at night. That was when, in any case, his manager, Irving Mills, was a brilliant man, and I asked Duke, Irving put his name on a lot of Duke's works, including Sophisticated Lady, and I said, "Did Irving take advantage of you?" He said, "No, not at all." He said, "Irving was the one that made it for me. He ran the Cotton Club, he made records with me, he got it on the radio, and he was very grateful to Irving Mills for everything he did." I stayed in touch with Irving until the very end. He sold his catalog of all those great songs for $5 million about 25 years ago. Today it's worth at least $100 million. That's the value of those copyrights. One strange thing about Duke, sometimes at the club, 5 or 6 guys would start to play. I said, "Duke, what is this? Where's the rest of the band?" And he said, "Well, they can show up when they want to. I'm not a disciplinarian." That was the strangest thing I ever saw. And sometimes, since we were doing concerts and the club, I would have him open the concert. They always had 5 or 6 acts on a concert. He'd open the concert and double back the club. And that was really exciting to have Duke in my presentations at 2 places in the same night. As you know, he wrote, it was a cooperative band, he wrote for the individual musicians. And so many songs came out of the musicians. Like I remember a story that he was playing Once in a While, da 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 dee 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 dee. It was a big hit. And Johnny Hodges, the rabbit, as they called him because of his exploits with women, he was playing da 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 dee da 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 da, an obligato behind Once in a While, and that became a big hit for Duke called I Let a Song Go Out of My Heart. Remember? I must say, they gave me 3 minutes to do 22 years, but there you have it. And my friend Orson Welles was very magnanimous. He said of Duke, he's the only other authentic American genius. And I must tell you the great line about the Duke. I've heard it said that talent borrows from others, but genius borrows only from itself. He was a true original. He was a sui generis human being. I hope you forgive a polysyllabic word, but I went to college too. Anyway, I never knew some of my other heroes, like Oscar Wilde, or Gustav Mahler, or George Gershwin, but I'm very grateful that I really knew Duke Ellington. Thank you.